The table was too long for the room. 12 chairs, mismatched but polished, squeezed around a linen runner Linda had ironed that morning. She'd placed cinnamon pine cones in a shallow glass dish as a centerpiece. One of them had cracked in the oven, faintly scorched on one side. I noticed it the way I notice everything, silently, without expression. The silverware was real. Linda insisted on that even if the knives didn't match. She liked appearances, liked when the house felt formal, like a photo spread in a military retirement brochure. A house with meaning, a family with order, a legacy. My father stood at the head of the table, carving fork in one hand, wine glass in the other, sleeves rolled up like a man still in command. The turkey was already losing heat. He was halfway through a story no one had asked for, something about logistics in Kandahar, fuel lines, convoy errors, the usual. When he paused, Linda took the cue. "And we are just so lucky," she said, smiling wide enough to show the caps on her molars, "to have such brave men around the table this year." She raised her glass toward Luke Bryant, who gave a courteous nod. Marine Corps. Retired. 2 tours. The kind of quiet most people mistake for modesty, not calculation. He had that scar above his left eyebrow, the kind you don't ask about because it's never the right moment. My father turned slightly to gesture at me with his carving knife. And of course, our Emma, keeping the world safe from paper jams. He smiled, looked around the table for laughter. "She's not kicking doors down, don't worry. She's a desk jockey over at State. Spreadsheets, PowerPoints, diplomacy." I didn't correct him. He turned back to the turkey, sawing at the breast with too much force. The skin tore unevenly. Someone, maybe Aunt Clara, laughed politely, just enough to signal permission for others to follow. The noise rose gently, the way it does when no one wants to be the first to question the joke. I passed the rolls to my cousin without looking up. Across the table, Luke set down his glass. My father kept going. "You know how it is. Some people are born to be out in the field. Some are born to keep the folders alphabetized. Both important." He looked straight at Luke. "But one of those rolls gets a man's blood moving. Am I right?" Luke didn't answer right away. Linda leaned forward and touched his wrist, pouring him another splash of wine. "You know what I always say," she offered. "Brains and beauty. That's our Emma. She keeps the wheels turning behind the scenes." The word "behind" landed harder than she realized. My father laughed again. "That's right. She's very organized. Got all those certificates. Even has a little call sign now, don't you?" I lifted my eyes slowly. He raised his eyebrows at me. "Go on, tell them. What's your little nickname from training?" "Orbit." "Orion," I said quietly. "See?" he said, turning back to the table. "That's cute. She always loved space stuff growing up." My uncle asked Luke about his medals. He answered in clipped, cautious sentences. Then he paused. His eyes tracked back across the table. To me. To my temple. I could see the moment it happened, his gaze resting on the faint scar just above my hairline, still visible if you knew where to look. He blinked. Once. Then again. "You're—" he began, his voice low, tentative. "You're Orion?" The room stilled. Even the children, half asleep in the den with plates of pie, seemed to pause. My father barked a laugh. "Now that's a good one," he said, shaking his head. "Luke, you've got to be kidding. She files mission reports. She doesn't run them." Luke didn't laugh. He pushed back his chair, not abruptly, not awkwardly. He stood with quiet precision, chin high, shoulders square, not saluting, but close. His voice was clearer this time. "We don't move without Orion's word." Linda's hand stilled on the wine bottle. The table shifted. You could hear the refrigerator hum from the kitchen. I folded my napkin and placed it on the table, neatly, edge-aligned. My father blinked. "Hold on," he said, laughing again, but thinner now. "Luke, you're telling me my daughter here, she's the one giving you orders?" Luke looked at me, not at him. "She rerouted us in Somalia," he said. "Saved the entire unit. We never saw her face, but we heard the voice. Calm, Exact. That was you. I didn't confirm or deny. I didn't have to. My father's mouth opened slightly. Linda recovered first. "Oh, well," she said brightly. "That's all very dramatic, isn't it?" Her voice pitched upward like a question. "Probably some kind of misunderstanding. Right, Emma." I reached for the pitcher and poured myself a glass of water. Luke's posture never wavered. We were about to walk into an ambush. Our comms were scrambled, satellite support delayed. Someone patched through, gave us new coordinates. She didn't shout, she didn't panic. She gave us exact bearings, 3 corrections 20 seconds apart. That voice saved 12 men. We called her Orion. No last name, no face, just a call sign. And now I know. My aunt reached for her wine glass with trembling fingers. Linda gave a tight laugh. "Well, I mean, anyone can sound official over a radio. I'm sure it's all very confusing. Right, Hank?" She looked at my father. He didn't answer. Someone cleared their throat. Silver clinked against china. The candles on the sideboard flickered as the heater kicked on. Luke turned slightly, his hands still at his sides. "Respectfully, sir," he said, "Orion is not a nickname. It's a designation. Air Force. Operational Command. She doesn't just file reports. She writes them. In real time. On live feeds. While people like me wait for her voice to say, 'Go,' or 'abort.'" I set my glass down. My father stared at the tablecloth. The silence in the room changed. It wasn't discomfort. It was realignment. People began to realize the joke wasn't funny anymore, that it hadn't been, even when they laughed. My cousin whispered something to her husband. He didn't respond. Linda reached out and touched my father's arm. "Say something," she hissed. He stood still, not even blinking. Luke inclined his head toward me again, the way a soldier acknowledges rank. "Ma'am," he said, "you have my respect, and my thanks." I nodded once. Noted. My father turned and looked at me. Really looked. Like he was trying to place someone familiar from a dream. "You never said," he murmured. "You never asked," I replied. No one spoke after that. Eventually, someone reached for the mashed potatoes. Someone else passed the cranberry sauce. But the mood never returned. You can't reset a room that's just been corrected by the truth. And you can't unsee a daughter you've misjudged in front of witnesses. I excused myself quietly. I didn't need to stay. The dinner was over. But the reckoning had just begun. I stayed one more night. Not out of obligation, not from doubt. I stayed to observe. The guest room was still painted soft blue from when it was a nursery. Linda had repurposed it into a tranquil space. Her words, not mine. Pale furniture, eucalyptus oil in a glass bottle near the window, a white noise machine I didn't turn on. The closet held spare linens, neatly folded and labeled in cursive on canvas bins. There were no signs that I had once lived here. Nothing of mine remained. I lay on top of the covers in uniform slacks and a t-shirt, watching the ceiling fan turn. Below, the dishwasher hummed. Someone laughed. Brittle. Delayed. Likely my father, trying to recover the mood with a story about hunting in Germany or falling off a loading dock in Kosovo. They'd laugh because they wanted things to go back. They always do. I let the night pass without interruption. At 5 a.m., I dressed, packed, made the bed with military corners. I left a thank you note on the nightstand. Nothing emotional, just a sentence of acknowledgement and a date. That's how I end missions, too. Close the file. Leave it clean. Downstairs, the house was quiet. Linda had arranged the leftovers into neat containers stacked by type. Poultry, starch, vegetable. She'd labeled them with masking tape. Help yourselves. I didn't. Instead, I opened the back door and stepped onto the porch. Cold air, damp leaves. A wind chime twitched against its frame. I stood still and let the silence settle around me. My boots made no sound on the steps. The driveway was empty except for my rental car. No one came to the window. No one followed. I drove 2 blocks before I turned on the heat. At the motel outside town, I changed into civilian clothes and sat with a cup of burnt coffee in a lobby that smelled like damp carpet and powdered creamer. The manager nodded politely when I passed. I nodded back. I didn't check my phone until afternoon. 5 messages, all from my father. "Call me when you have time." "Can we talk?" "Linda's upset. She didn't mean anything by it." "This thing with Luke, I don't want it to get out of hand." "Emma, you embarrassed me." That last one I read twice. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened a secure folder on my device. Inside it were 3 documents, one from Somalia, one from Ramstein, and one with a redacted seal that never leaves digital format. I reread them carefully. They hadn't changed. That's why I trust documents. They don't shift under pressure. They don't try to rewrite themselves after the fact. That evening, I flew out of Norfolk. No one saw me off. The week after, things returned to motion. I briefed at Langley. I worked a 3-day sequence at the DIC. I corrected 2 protocol errors in a NATO joint tasking file and didn't mention it. Quiet work is still work. The people who matter know where credit belongs. One morning, a clerk stopped me near the elevators. She looked nervous. "Captain Riley?" she said. Someone called. A Luke Bryant? He didn't leave a message. Just said you'd know." I nodded. "Thank you." I didn't call him back. Not yet. 3 days later, he sent a letter. Not electronic. Real paper, white envelope, no return address. Inside were 6 lines written in clean block letters. "Ma'am, I owe you more than I can say. That night, you saved us. You don't need to respond. I just wanted you to know I remember. Luke." I folded the letter and filed it under a personal tab. Then I went back to my workstation. A month passed. I received an invitation in the mail. Linda's handwriting, curled, precise, pale pink stationery. "You are cordially invited to the Riley family holiday gathering December 23rd. Casual attire. Bring a dish to share." I didn't respond. 3 days later, my father left a voicemail. "Come home. Let's put things behind us. Everyone's asking about you." I pictured the table again, the way they all leaned forward when he joked, the way they turned toward Luke when he stood. I remembered my father's laugh, how much he relied on it, as if volume could create meaning. I deleted the message. Early January, I received a digital packet marked Internal Clearance Review, Black Lantern. My name was listed as Operations Lead, my timestamp, my signature. The briefing required me to appear in uniform at a federal courtroom in D.C. 2 weeks out. My brother Jason's name was also in the file. Charges: conduct unbecoming, mishandling classified communication, dereliction of duty. I requested an additional review before taking the stand. It was granted. In private, I reviewed every order I'd issued under Operation Black Lantern. Nothing irregular, nothing emotional. Each timestamp aligned. Every protocol observed. The truth was simple. Jason disobeyed. The day of the hearing, I arrived early. I wore full dress blues, not for them, for the record. There are uniforms and there is presence. Both matter. Inside the courthouse, the floor echoed beneath my heels. I sat at the edge of the 3rd bench while they reviewed motions. The prosecutor nodded when he saw me. Jason avoided my eyes. My parents sat behind him. Linda clutched a tissue. My father's hands were folded tight. He looked smaller. When they called my name, I stepped forward, raised my right hand, swore the oath, took the stand. The defense attorney leaned forward, trying to appear gentle. "Captain Riley, in your words, who was the lead officer on Operation Black Lantern?" I looked directly at him. "I said. "Captain Emma Riley, Operational Command, all directives under my call sign, Orion." There was a pause, the kind that shifts a room. Jason's lawyer dropped his pen. Linda made a soft sound. My father's mouth opened slightly, then closed. No one spoke. I continued calmly. On the night in question, I issued a halt order based on an intercepted data thread. Jason Riley disregarded that halt. His actions initiated a breach. The resulting compromise risked 6 lives. The defense attorney began to object. The judge overruled. I finished my statement. Brief, controlled. When I stood, I turned away from the defense table. I didn't look at Jason. I didn't speak to my father. I didn't pause at my mother's shoulder. I walked out of the courtroom and into the cold D.C. air. One step, then another. I didn't shiver. That night, I filed the transcript. Then I went for a run. The streets were quiet. My lungs burned. My thighs ached on the incline. I welcomed it. Pain tells the truth. Comfort doesn't. Back in my apartment, I peeled off the wet layers, drank water, and stood barefoot on the hardwood. No television, no music, just the radiator ticking softly against the wall. I thought of Jason's face as I spoke, of the way my father stared. I felt nothing that required repair. Some things are not broken, they're just finished. The morning after the hearing, I didn't check my messages. I didn't return any calls. I showed up for the 0600 briefing at the Defense Intelligence Center, sat through 3 rounds of operational updates, logged adjustments, filed 2 anomaly reports, debriefed a junior officer who mistook decisiveness for aggression. I corrected him once, quietly, then watched him correct himself the rest of the way. Afterward, I walked the long corridor to the Archives Division. Not everyone knows how to navigate that wing. Fewer know what to ask for. Fewer still know how to read it correctly. I signed the log. The clerk scanned my badge and nodded. No questions. Inside, the room was cold, quiet, faintly chemical. The light buzzed overhead. I pulled on gloves, set the documents on the metal table one by one. Somalia, Ramstein, Black Lantern. I read them all again. This time, I didn't scan. I analyzed. Page 7 in the Ramstein file contained a redacted notation time-stamped 0413 Zulu, my handwriting. A secondary signature, mismatched, rushed, appeared beside it. That was the key. Someone had tried to adjust the record. The mismatch wasn't an accident. It was a calculated oversight, designed to pass inspection at a glance. But I don't glance. I photographed the original documents, not digitally, not on my phone. I used the field camera in the back lab, manual, low exposure, high contrast. I developed the negatives myself. When the prints dried, I sealed them in a beige folder, labeled only with my initials and a classification string. That folder went into a case. The case went into a locker. The key went on my wrist. I didn't speak to my father for 36 days. On the 37th, he called at 11:42 p.m. The voicemail was short. "Emma, you need to call me. Something's happened." I didn't. At 0300, he called again. Then Linda. Then Jason. That's when I knew. At 600, I checked the secure news wire. The headline was quiet, tucked beneath political updates and energy trade briefings. Internal review launched into State Department clearance breach. No names, no agencies, just language calibrated to deflect attention. But I knew what it meant. Someone had tried to scrub a record they didn't own. The discrepancy in the Ramstein file had triggered an automatic review. A system designed for deniability had instead tripped on its own redundancy. That's the thing about built-in safeguards. If you lie to them, they tell. I received an envelope by courier the next afternoon, plain brown, hand-delivered. Inside, a single page. A letterhead I hadn't seen in 3 years, my signature at the bottom. Beside it, a second name, Jason. The page was a transfer request, a reallocation of control over a limited access project. Black Lantern, dated 6 months prior, pre-approved, no alerts, no flags. But the signature wasn't mine. I recognized the penmanship, but not the pressure. It had been traced. That meant he had a sample, a reference, and that meant someone gave it to him. I called legal, not civilian, not internal. I called Colonel Rivas. She didn't ask questions. She simply said, "Come in at 700. Bring what you have." When I arrived, she had already pulled my record. She had my commission file open on her screen. She pointed to a blank section. "This is where the internal review will start," she said. "What you put here determines what happens next." I placed the folder on the desk. She opened it, read in silence. After 4 minutes, she closed it again. "This goes far beyond your brother." "I know." She tapped the edge of the folder twice. "Why didn't you come forward sooner?" "I was watching." She nodded. "You're prepared to testify?" "Yes." "And if this reaches your father?" "I'm prepared." She leaned back. "You understand this could mean dishonorable discharge, stripped clearance, for both of them?" "Yes." "No appeal. No silence either." Rivas didn't smile. She just stood. "You'll be contacted. Until then, say nothing, to anyone. Understood?" "Understood." I left without shaking her hand. That's how these things go. 3 days later, I received a request to appear before the Armed Services Oversight Committee, 2 weeks from Friday, in uniform. This time, the briefing would not be closed. I spent those 2 weeks in deliberate obscurity. I didn't visit my family. I didn't return Linda's calls. I did the work, coordinated airdrops, analyzed signal threads, led a classified sequence involving 3 drone teams and a compromised transport. After hours, I returned to my apartment, cooked simple food, read the old journals I kept in a fireproof lockbox beneath the closet floorboards. The writing was clean, sparse, just facts. 2009, basic training, rain, sprained ankle, didn't report. 2010, first live simulation, oxygen failure, stayed calm. 2012, took the oath. No emotion, just steadiness. I closed the journal and filed it back in its box. No need to read more. I already knew who I was. The hearing was scheduled for 8:30. I arrived at 7:30. Security was tight. Metal detectors, 2 checkpoints. My clearance carried me through both. Inside, the room was colder than expected. The air conditioning ran high despite the season. A tactic, probably. Keep people unsettled, make them sweat, create the illusion of pressure. I don't sweat under pressure. The panel sat in front. 5 members, 1 civilian observer, 2 legal advisors. Jason was not in the room. My father was. He sat in the back row, alone, not in uniform. His suit hung loose on his frame. He looked older. When I entered, he didn't stand. When I passed him, I didn't turn. The chairwoman adjusted her glasses. "Captain Riley," she said, "thank you for coming." "Yes, ma'am." "Do you understand why you're here?" "Yes." "And are you prepared to make a statement?" "I am." She nodded. "Proceed." I stepped forward. I didn't read from notes. I didn't bring visual aids. I simply spoke. In October of last year, Operation Black Lantern experienced a breach. The incident was originally attributed to miscommunication under duress. That explanation was false. The breach occurred because a lead officer, Lieutenant Jason Riley, initiated a transfer of operational command without proper authorization. The paperwork supporting that transfer contains my name, my call sign, my signature. That signature is not mine. The author of that forged record had access to my personnel file. That access was facilitated, directly or indirectly, by a retired Army officer who previously held supply and clearance authority within DoD systems. That officer is present in this room. A murmur moved through the rows. I didn't look back. I continued. I am not presenting this information as conjecture. I have provided documentation, verified by internal review, supported by timestamps, key logs, and authentication trails. These records have been submitted to Colonel Rivas for formal proceedings. The chairwoman's hands folded on the desk. "Captain Riley," she said, "are you aware of the implications of your statement?" "Yes." "And you are prepared to stand by them?" "Yes." She studied me for a moment, then nodded once. "Very well. The committee will recess. You will be contacted once the formal report is filed." I saluted, turned, and walked out. My father stood as I passed. I didn't stop. He opened his mouth, just slightly. I didn't give him the moment. He didn't deserve it. Outside, the sky was clear. No wind, no movement. I paused on the steps, took a breath, and let the silence settle. Then I kept walking. No anger, no relief, just forward motion. The weight was shifting, quietly, and not in his direction. The story broke in the second week of March, not a headline, not a scandal, just a series of controlled disclosures, footnotes in official bulletins, a quiet update to the department's internal watch list, one name removed, one name added. Jason's clearance was suspended. My father's status as a consulting veteran liaison with 2 local programs was revoked pending review. I didn't speak to either of them. I didn't need to. The system had already spoken. Linda sent a message, short, measured. The way people write when they're trying not to leave fingerprints. There's a lot of confusion right now. Please call if you're willing. I wasn't. She followed up a week later. This time, she used passive voice. We were saddened by the way things unfolded. So many people are hurting. So many people. That phrase always means, not us. Luke reached out once, briefly. A secure message. We've heard. Quiet, but we hear things. We're behind you. No explanation necessary. I didn't reply. I didn't have to. Some people understand what silence really means. By April, my father had withdrawn from every veterans group he'd once used to display his mentorship. Not publicly. He just stopped attending. Emails went unanswered. Messages unread. According to one contact inside a military alumni board, he claimed health issues as the reason for his retreat. No one pressed. People rarely press when a man falls quietly. They just stop quoting him. I returned to work as usual. Mission load was heavy. Mid-East intel flagged new activity on 2 fronts. I managed 4 briefings in 10 days, 1 on foreign soil. Each one delivered on time, in regulation format with clean validation. No one asked about the hearing. Those who knew didn't speak. Those who didn't need to. One morning in May, I received a summons to a final review panel. Internal affairs, not disciplinary, procedural. The file was thick, printed, bound in gray with a black cord seal. My name embossed on the top. I sat in a small room with 3 officers I'd never met. 1 civilian auditor, a notary. They asked precise questions. I gave precise answers. They confirmed. My actions met all protocol expectations. My documentation was sound. My security posture was upheld. The panel chair closed the file. Captain Riley, she said, you've acted with discretion and fidelity. You are cleared for continued service. I nodded once. However, she added, you should be aware that unofficial consequences may follow. I am. She looked at me carefully. Family fallout can become a vulnerability. That's why we flag it. I understand. Will this remain contained? Yes. She paused. Has it been difficult? No. I stood. Thank you. Outside, I walked back to the parking garage in uniform, not hurried, not slow. A controlled pace, the kind they teach in formal procession, steady, deliberate, composed. No one approached me. I drove back to the base alone. By June, I knew things had shifted permanently. Linda stopped contacting me, not because she understood, because she'd recalculated. I was no longer leverage, I was a threat. She responded the way people like her always do, with distance disguised as civility. When her birthday passed, she didn't mention that I hadn't called. When my father's health scare made its way into a family group text, she copied a news article about hydration and said nothing else. Jason's case proceeded to closed review. No criminal charges, no public record. But he would never hold a command role again. His career was done. My father didn't speak to the press, but he started going to church again. People said he looked tired, that he wasn't the same. No one said he was wrong. In July, I returned home, not to see them, not to talk, just to walk the perimeter. I parked 3 blocks away and approached the house on foot. Same porch, same wind chime, same faint smell of mulch and mint. Linda's attempt at flower beds had failed again. She'd replaced them with fake geraniums in resin pots. They looked deliberate. The front window was open. I stood at the edge of the walkway and waited. Inside, I could see the living room. My father sat in his chair, not reading, not watching TV, just staring toward the fireplace, the same place he used to keep his medals. They were gone now, removed. The shelf was bare except for a single photo of Jason in uniform. I wondered if he thought that image could rewrite what had happened. He didn't see me. I didn't move. After 3 minutes, I turned and walked away. I never touched the gate. August brought a new assignment. Promotion, major, reassignment, Defense Intelligence Center, Maryland. Command level clearance, operational team lead. No ceremony, just a line of text in the internal system and a badge update. I didn't tell anyone in my family. Luke found out on his own. 2 weeks later, he appeared at a closed debrief, sat quietly in the front row beside 3 men I hadn't met. His old unit, I realized, the ones I'd redirected that night in Somalia. After the session, they stood. No applause, no handshakes, just presence. One by one, they left. Luke waited until the room was empty. Then he approached the lectern. He didn't salute, just looked at me even. "Ma'am," he said, "you've been steady from day one." I nodded once. He paused. "If you ever need a witness," he said, "you have one." Then he left. No contact since. But that's not silence. That's respect. In September, I received a letter, handwritten, shaky. My father. Inside the envelope, a folded sheet, unlined. Ink bled slightly along the bottom edge. "Emma, I was wrong. I said a lot of things I thought made me sound like a soldier, but I wasn't looking at one sitting across the table. I didn't see what you were doing, how you held things together. You didn't shout. You didn't argue. I used to think legacy meant being the loudest voice in the room. I see now that it's the voice people follow without needing to be told. I submitted your name for the Distinguished Service Medal. I don't know if that makes up for anything, but I'm proud of you, and I'm sorry." No closing, no return address. I read it twice. Then I placed it in the drawer marked personal. It sits beside an old service coin, a worn passbook, and a folded flag. Not because I forgave him, but because it's part of the record. I never sent a reply. He didn't ask for one, and I don't offer what isn't requested. Later that week, I sat alone in my new office. Papers in order, systems secure, desk clear except for one photo, a satellite image of a mission corridor, the route I cleared for Luke's team that night, 3 faded lines, 12 lives, 1 voice. That's the job. That's the legacy. A year passed. The Distinguished Service Medal arrived in a flat black case, unsigned, no ceremony, no notice, just internal delivery protocol and a carbon receipt I initialed without comment. The citation inside named no location, no mission, no personnel. Just the phrase, exemplary coordination in high-risk operational zones, resulting in preservation of life and mission continuity. I locked it in the drawer marked professional. It sits beside a thumb drive, 3 credential tags, and a folded note from my first commanding officer that reads simply, "Keep steady." My father never called again. Not after the letter, not after the medal. The silence wasn't hostile. It was complete. He had said what he was able to say. I had read it. That was the exchange. Linda did not write. I didn't expect her to. She operated best in rooms where roles were assigned early and boundaries blurred by sentiment. I didn't fit her structure. She never found a place to put me, so she left me out. Jason disappeared into quiet places. Short contracts, distant bases, small positions no one questioned too closely. The military doesn't ruin its own cleanly. It shelves them, puts them where their stories can't spread. I didn't follow him. His part was finished. By November, the DIC assigned me a new analyst team, 12 personnel, 6 new, 4 mid-career, 2 transfer cases with potential. I read every file, twice. I changed nothing the first month. Let them work. Let the patterns show. On week 5, I made 3 silent reassignments. 1 officer removed from comms rotation after crosstalk flagged in the logs. No warning, just a lateral move. 1 enlisted analyst promoted to lead after 2 clean intercepts and a redundancy correction caught without prompting. 1 external contact barred from further clearance access after unauthorized document tagging in shared systems. The change was immediate. Morale didn't rise, but steadiness did. That's the goal. In command, you don't reward noise, you reward precision. Thanksgiving came again. I was on shift. The rotation schedule had been built 2 months earlier. I hadn't requested the date. I hadn't avoided it. I just accepted what came. The mess hall was half full. Civilian staff had decorated with paper leaves. Someone played acoustic covers through the speakers. The air smelled like salt and overcooked stuffing. No one complained. Luke showed up at 17:30. He didn't approach me. He sat near the corner table with 2 men from his unit. They ate, spoke softly, stayed present. Before leaving, one of them nodded toward me. I nodded back. No words exchanged. Still, I noted it. Sometimes family forms quietly, not through obligation, but through recognition. In early December, I was asked to guest lecture at an operations training program for incoming field officers. Topic: Command and Silence, Decision-Making Under Visibility Thresholds. The title had been assigned. I didn't change it. I arrived on time, wore standard uniform, no insignia beyond what was required. The room held 40 candidates. Most were eager, some were posturing, a few looked tired already. I spoke for 40 minutes. I didn't tell stories. I gave facts. The number of seconds you have to make a go/no-go call before a window closes, 11.4. The average response lag from team to command in dust interference conditions, 2.3 seconds. The percentage of outcomes affected not by the initial decision, but by the clarity of the order, 89%. I ended with a statement, not a question. Your voice will be recorded. Your silences will be interpreted. If you haven't decided who you are before the mission begins, someone else will do it for you. That includes your family. No applause, no questions, just the sound of pens moving. That was enough. The week before Christmas, a letter arrived. No return address. The envelope was soft from handling. Inside, a photo. Me in dress blues, courtroom stills taken without flash. Below it, a card, typed. We saw, we weren't supposed to, but we did. You walked out on your terms. Thank you. No signature. I placed it in the personal drawer, between the medal and the letter from my father. That drawer is not about memory, it's about precision. You keep the record. You don't reread it. New Year's came. No party. No noise. I watched a satellite feed over the Middle East until the clock rolled over. A birthday passed, then spring, then a call from NATO command about a data sync error. I traced it to a routing fault in Brussels and corrected it within the hour. No one congratulated me. That's the standard. The higher you go, the quieter it gets. May brought news of an internal citation update. The Orion call sign was officially retired. No reassignment, no rotation, just retired. It meant something. Not fame, not credit, finality. When a system acknowledges your role without asking for performance again, that's how you know you did it right. You closed it clean. In June, a new officer asked to meet. Young, sharp, just promoted. She said, "They told me you never talk about what happened." I said, "That's correct." She hesitated. Then, "Can I ask you something else?" "Yes." "Do you regret how it ended with your family?" I looked at her. Simple, calm, clear. I didn't end it. "Oh," she said, "I'm sorry." "No need to be." She left quietly. Didn't ask again. She'll do well. In July, I was reassigned to Operations Planning Command, strategic oversight, cross-theater systems, shadow-level coordination. The room has no windows. The desk is steel. The personnel are precise. It suits me. Once a week, I take 15 minutes to sit in silence before the monitors boot. No notes, no feed, no movement, just the sound of the system waiting for a decision. That's where the work really happens. Before the voice, before the call, in that pause. My father taught me that legacy was a speech, a name on a plaque, a firm handshake in a room full of witnesses. But legacy isn't noise, it's accuracy. It's whether the right people know what you did, even if the rest never will. It's what remains steady when everything else moves. I don't call myself Orion anymore. That was for then. Now I'm just Major Riley. No one jokes about desk jobs now. No one needs to ask what I do. They follow instructions. They follow protocol. And when they ask for the final authority, they know where to look. I'll leave eventually. Quietly. Cleanly. No speech, no ceremony, just a sealed report, filed without error, signed once, and placed where it belongs. The drawer will still be there, still labeled personal, still holding the pieces, not to revisit, not to regret, but to know exactly what was mine and what was never theirs. What did this story bring up for you? If it struck something quiet, something true, you're welcome to share it, or not. Either way, I'm here. I write these stories in silence, but not in isolation. If you'd like to read more, you can subscribe. No pressure, just presence.